South Africa here, and we are very honored to be joined once again by Khulekana Skosana, who is the chairperson for International Relations and Solidarity of the ANC Youth League, African National Congress Youth League. Khulekana, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having us. Happy New Year, and I hope it's been a great year for you, beginning of change. Thank you for having us.
Well, no, we're honored to have you back. And, you know, the sort of proximate issue here is what we've seen here in the United States, the controversy, not controversy, it's only a controversy here in the U.S., but the U.S. government speaking out against South Africa for hosting upcoming naval drills with the navies of China and Russia. And recently the Minister for International Relations essentially pushed back against the United States, saying that South Africa, you know, is not going to be dictated to and that this is just a part of your normal relations. But I wonder how you respond to the accusations by the United States that somehow South Africa is endangering itself or the African continent by engaging in naval drills with two of its allies.
I don't understand how being a sovereign nation and taking our own decisions would be endangering ourselves. Certainly, what we must clarify is that all countries in the world conduct military exercises with their friends and with whoever they choose to. The United States has done this a lot of times. I mean, with plus minus 200 military bases all over the world. And it's a bit of a double standard because just recently in 2019, South Africa held a military exercise with the United States of America to great approval. And we did not receive any backlash from China or Russia because they respect the sovereignty of our country. So in the same manner that we respect the sovereignty of the American states or the USA, we expect the same. I think the South African government has had an intent for a long time to rubber stamp our diplomatic independence. We think that it is the people of South Africa who should take decisions with who we become friends with and who we do not become friends with. And like I said, we've had military exercises with the French, with the American, and there was no criticism then. So we don't understand what danger that is, but we don't see any danger with us having military exercises with our friends, which we've done in the past and will continue to do.
You know, it's interesting. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen was in South Africa, I believe, today. And she did not raise U.S. criticisms of these military exercises, which I think says something about the U.S. is really trying to play this balancing act because they realize South Africa's power here. But she did bring up the issue of sanctions. My camera is about to turn off, but I'm going to keep saying this question and then go fix that. But she did bring up the issue of sanctions, U.S. sanctions on Russia. And I'm just curious how South Africa is responding to the issue of U.S. pressure when it comes to sanctions on both Russia and China.
South Africa has not imposed any sanctions on Russia or China. In fact, pertinent to the question is that our trade relations with America are only a measly 22 billion US dollars. And in contrast to that, our trade relations with Russia, it's about, what is it? It's about 1.4 billion. But when you compare that as well and include our trade relations with China, it brings us to just above 53 billion US dollars. So us maintaining what we call our non-aligned position is to state that our interests come first as a people, just like the United States keeps its interests first on its chest. We believe that the reason that we will continue to maintain relations with China and Russia is on the basis of our relations in terms of BRICS, and not limited to that, but we have very intense and historic relations with the two countries who when the United States had declared our fight against apartheid, and the United States chose to sponsor the apartheid regime. It is China, it is the Russian people, the former USSR, that supported us. However, we are not having relations with China and Russia only on the basis of our historic relations, but it is mutually beneficial to the three countries, and not limited to, but to all the 5 countries in BRICS, and a BRICS that will soon expand. And we are calling for a multipolar world where we don't have a self-appointed leader of the world. We don't have a bully that preaches democracy but insults and spits on the face of democracy when other countries make their own decisions. You can't say you are a free state, you are a free country, and you believe in democracy, but when other nations take their own decisions, you want to dictate. Just next door to us, there's a military base of the American government just here in Botswana. And that just must show you the type of Western imperialist hegemony that exists, the dominance that they've established. And we want to say that we believe in a world where there is no one center of power. And when we speak of democracy, demos kratos, it's about for the people, by the people. And at the center of it is equality. We think that America should not just be the only superpower in the world, and us, we are toiling around as developing nations forever. We would also like to see one day an African country sitting in the United Nations Security Council. We would want to see multilateralism. We would want to see a reformed United Nations which really respects the sovereignty, rights, and freedoms of all the people, and doesn't just talk about it. So I think America should practice what it preaches, and it preaches independence, it preaches sovereignty. That is not only owed to the American people, but us Africans as well, the Chinese, the Russians, basically the global south basically also is growing, and we want to be part of that growth. So when you speak of sanctions, I personally, as a young person, see sanctions as weapons of war, because sanctions result in hunger. Sanctions at the core of them are targeting the people, the civilians who have nothing to do with the decisions taken by the respective governments. So we think that, in particular, to speak about Africa, the sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe should be lifted. The blockade imposed on Cuba should be lifted, because when we speak about punishing those that we believe have committed crimes, the American government is seemingly being selective. It does nothing in response to the heinous crimes committed by the Israeli regime. It does nothing about the heinous crimes committed in Rwanda, in Cuba, and the rest of the world. So if you are going to speak of sanctions, then don't be selective. Also punish Israel and those who commit crimes. Also punish Morocco for imposing apartheid on the people of Western Sahara. So we're worried about the US government that is selective on sanctions that it imposes on the countries that it thinks do not agree with them.
You know, as and you reference this to build something off of, you are with the ANC Youth League, and you know, I think for Africa, which is the youngest continent on earth, I mean, every African country is just dominated by people under the age of 30. And I know you've been in Tanzania recently, you've been in Ethiopia, you've been in other places engaging with youth on the African continent. And I know President Ramaphosa has said that South Africa's presidency of the BRICS this year is very much focused on how the BRICS can help lift up the African continent, the AU 2063 agenda. So I wonder, from both the youth in South Africa and the young people on the continent you've had the opportunity to interface with, I mean, what is the future for Africa that people would like to see and work towards?
The future for Africa is that where we achieve African Renaissance. The future for Africa is where we fully achieve the ideals and objectives of Pan-Africanism. I think what the African people and young people in the continent have expressed themselves on is that we would like to be free for real and not live in this pretend world where we are told we're free, but we do not own land, we do not own control the means of production, and we are told how we must run our countries, what we must eat, and what we must wear. We want an Africa where it is for Africans by Africans. We want Africans to buy their own clothes, eat their own food, and produce and refine their own minerals. Currently, in the continent, for example, coltan and cobalt, 80% of the deposits are found in the DRC, but you don't find a single refinery of that mineral wealth in the DRC. The deposits of oil, gas, that you find in Cabo Delgado. Recently, there's a discovery of gas in Cabo Delgado. All of a sudden, there's terrorists there. We don't know who sponsored those terrorists, but you can see with the sophistication of their weapons that they did not pick those weapons from the tree. So we are begging that if you are going to have foreign military bases here in Africa, when Africans do not have a single military base in Europe or in America, that is not freedom. That is definitely not freedom. So we're asking that all foreign military bases that are found in Africa, they must leave. Companies that own land in our continent when we do not own land in Europe, in America, they must leave. We want friendship and we want trade relations, but we want to do that with our terms on the table. We don't want to be told what to do. We want African young people to pride themselves in studying in Africa. We want people of African descent to find pride and joy in coming to visit Africa and not just look at it as a poverty-ridden continent. So the freedom and full attainment of freedom in our continent is not limited to us just being given a microphone and the ability to speak, but it is the retention of our mineral resources so that we can be able to feed ourselves, so that we can be able to build our continent by ourselves. And those who come to the African continent to dictate, time is up for them. We only are going to be engaging with people who are going to listen to us and allow us to set terms. And China and Russia have been proving themselves to do so. As I said, when we meet, when our government has a meeting with the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Yellen, you don't find a complaint from the Chinese government. When we meet with the leadership of President Ramaphosa went to meet with the king in Britain, there was no single statement from Russia or China. That's because they respect our sovereignty. So we expect the same from the American people. If you want us to respect you, you must also respect us, because we are no longer living in slavery here. We fought for our freedom. It was not given to us. People died for the freedom that we enjoy here. So our sovereignty and ability to make decisions and conduct business with whoever we want must be respected. And the future of Africa that we want is where young people and the people of the continent understand that we will not be dictated to anymore. Our mineral resources will not be stolen anymore. We will be trading on our own terms.
Mm-hmm. Well, Khulekana Skosana, Chairperson for International Relations and Solidarity with the ANC Youth League. As always, great to have you on the show, and thanks for giving us some of your time here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm. Always enlightening. Great person to follow on Twitter, I have to say. Khulekana, he's all over the world doing a lot of great things. He was in Donbass. He's all over the African continent. A great way to track a lot that's going on with young people who are getting active. And on that note, we want to turn just to